The Taming of Coyote, Chapter 6. Men gathered in the square. Boys of 14 up to old able-bodied men formed a tight ball of populace about the scaffold. Many wore hats to shade their eyes from the hot sun overhead. The womenfolk, by now, had gone on their way. There were plenty of things to tend to at home. There were chores to perform, meals to cook, and bushels to gather for the cause. The majority of such charity was to be carried out by the volunteers from the menfolk. Sonia chose to stay behind. The whole matter had caught her curiosity. It was different and new. It was far more interesting than stupid chores. There was no telling when she'd get home now. It depended on her level of boredom and/or the actions of Uncle Homer. Either way, she'd be forced to go home to help. Playing in the woods, especially with the recent events, would not be tolerated. "Are you going to be doing anything for care?" she asked. "Well," Uncle Homer began, "I suppose it would be a nice excuse to get out of turn for a while. Besides, I've been doing a heap of good elsewhere. Your Aunt Esther can handle the farm for a while. The womenfolk pull together at times like this. Might do you some good, too. It's about time you took up some responsibility and learned them womanly duties." Sonia let a huff. "Uncle Homer!" "No arguing, Sonia. You help out good now. You'll get good at it. Then you can make some young man a good wife one day." That made her scrunch up her face. She had no interest in marriage at this point in her life, especially none of the boys from Turn. She was more boyish herself, yet so carefree. She didn't even like dolls. There was nothing domestic or maternal about her. She was a free spirit, and she wasn't ready to leave behind the youthful innocence she loved. Perhaps she was just too boyish in nature to consider it. "When will everyone be going?" Uncle Homer gave a smile and patted her head. "You're an impatient one. It'll be quite a busy ordeal. It could take 3 or 4 days to get everything ready to go. We got our own harvesting after all. Then we can take the gifts to care. There's no telling how long reconstruction will take. We'll just have to pray that all goes well." The hustle and bustle of Turn increased threefold. Above everyday duties of the villagers came the charity to bless care. Bushels of fruits and vegetables were loaded into large covered wagons. The womenfolk graciously hurried to make extra jams to put in pretty baskets. It was obvious that the people of Turn never did anything halfway. This village had been generous since its establishment. It was something that had always been in the blood of its residents. Was there any selfishness in the matter? Of course. Lord Grundle offered great supervision and ordered about the people of Turn. He would spout about the rewards that would come back to them. The prestige would be grand. With Turn's darker history, something like this would thicken the wall between then and now. The people of Turn would be heroes, and Lord Grundle would claim all the glory, the responsibility, and would likely use it to manipulate care at some point in the future. In that aspect, he stood alone. A bray signaled dissatisfaction in such work. The stubborn donkey pulled back as Sonia tried to force him forward. She just knew that she should have insisted on using the far more agreeable Jenny. The jack never seemed to cooperate, despite his much greater talent for the burden of pulling. However, Uncle Homer and Aunt Esther insisted upon him for just that reason, a stronger equine. The cart behind him was full of bushels and baskets covered in linen, ready to be placed into the wagons in the square. In order to get them, Aunt Esther had to spend extra time in the kitchen while Sonia was forced to pluck crops from the garden. Needless to say, her little hands were sore. On the upside, she could say she proudly did her part. That was more than this stupid Jack was doing. "Sonia, don't dally!" Aunt Esther scolded. "We don't have time for this." "I'm not!" Sonia spat as she pulled on the Jack's bridle. "He's not cooperating! He's being the real ass!" Aunt Esther brought a hand to her chest with a flabbergasted gasp. Had she really heard that from the child's mouth? Nobody would dare! Uncle Homer reacted quite differently. He found great humor in it, and he began to burst out in laughter. "Homer! Don't encourage her! If she keeps mouthing off like a boy, she'll never be able to land a decent husband. No man wants a tomboy for a bride." "Oh, Esther," Uncle Homer groaned. "It was funny. Relax. Maybe she'll get a girly husband, and then she can be the man of the house. I'm half tempted to send her to care with you. Maybe there will be a boy there that can keep her and let her ride." "Esther?" "You'd take me to care?" Sonia asked. She ignored the enraging things Aunt Esther spouted and focused on the notion of being able to escape turn for a while. "I've never been to another village before." "No, no, no," Uncle Homer replied as he shook his head. "It's too dangerous for you women folk to chance a trip like that. Just leave the traveling to the men. You stay here and help Aunt Esther and the other women." "Great," she mumbled. "I get to stay here with everyone left behind and the worthless Lord Grundle. Why doesn't he go too? In fact, why doesn't he get off his high horse and actually help do the labor? You know, rather than just tell everyone how to do it like he has some sort of clue." "Sonia!" Aunt Esther scolded. Now," Uncle Homer added. "Let's not get ugly. Lord Grundle will be more useful here." Indeed, even the menfolk were fully aware of how useless Lord Grundle would be on this sort of adventure. He never did manual labor, and the people of Care would likely be less tolerant of his bossy ways. What a waste. "Now hurry, Sonia! Get that jack moving!" With puffed-out cheeks, Sonia glared into the donkey's face. He gave a flinch and a snort as he tried to step backward. In total frustration, she grabbed onto his bridle and gave the jack a good kick. He let out a bray and flew into a quick gallop, or at least as much as possible, with a cart attached to him. Unfortunately, Sonia's hand was still caught in the bridle. She was yanked off her feet and dragged in the dirt towards the square. Aunt Esther let out a scream of panic. She called after Sonia as she chased after the jack-drawn cart, now out of control. Uncle Homer was of no help in the matter. He gave his leg a good slap and doubled over, holding his stomach in laughter as if he were coming apart at the seams. In the square, work slowed to a halt as pair after pair of eyes lifted and turned towards the oncoming cart. Behind it came a screaming woman. Behind her came a man in uncontrollable laughter. It brought a range of mixed reactions from the other villagers. It was Roland, the visitor from Care, which finally offered his assistance. He hopped off the large wagon and grabbed onto the other side of the bridle as the jack passed. His intention was to pull him to a stop. However, he too became trapped in the bridle and dragged through the dirt. It threw Aunt Esther further into hysterics and Uncle Homer further into hysterical laughter. Tears had been pushed from his tightly closed eyes from his mirth. Luck finally started to shift in favor of Sonia and Roland. Between the cart full of food and the two humans hanging from his face, the jack became quite tired from all the weight. He slowed as he huffed and puffed until he finally came to an exhausted stop in the square. Some of the villagers joined in Uncle Homer's laughter, and some joined in Aunt Esther's frantic cries. As for Roland and Sonia, they both dropped like a sack of potatoes from the bridle and fell onto their faces in a cloud of dirt. Groans of embarrassment and exhaustion escaped them, though they suffered no significant injuries to their person. Mostly, it was just their pride. "Oh, my heavens!" Aunt Esther cried as she tried, with some assistance, to get them to their feet. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, ma'am," Roland groaned. "It will take a whole lot more than a jackass to get the best of me." Aunt Esther then began to pat on Sonia's dress. "Oh, how horrible! Look at this mess! Homer! Homer!" "Quit your whining, you old bat!" Uncle Homer called back. "Now that was mighty plumb funny." "She could have hurt our guest," Aunt Esther hissed. "Oh, he's a strong lad," Uncle Homer laughed as he slapped a hand on Roland's back. It caused the young man to cough and sputter. You okay, Sonia? Fine, she whined and slurred. I'm just dirty. Oh, I hope we didn't lose the load, Annetta squealed as she rushed to check the cargo. Good, it was all there. None of it had even tipped over. There was nothing out of place. Oh, thank heavens! A very fluid assembly line had formed in branches about the charity wagons. The resources were spread out and sorted throughout the square. Building supplies, such as lumber, tools, etc., were loaded into huge wagons on the one end of the square. Non-edibles, they were called. Food and camping supplies were placed in others. Monster horses would be hauling such mighty loads. They were thicker and mightier than the horses being ridden and pulling the small and average loads. As the food was being loaded into the other wagons, great care was taken to place the baskets in a wagon of their own. True, most of the wagons would be a welcome sight to the men of care. However, it was for certain that these baskets would be a gracious gift to the women of care. The items used for the menfolk in escort, however, had to be placed separately. It would take days to reach care, and hunting for tern was not very good. It would do to carry everything one would need to eat and keep warm and dry in the worst of scenarios. And of course, the one thing they'd never leave Tern without was their guns. Everything had been accounted for. It wasn't very often that the people of Tern ate as a community. This was an unusual yet welcome occurrence. Everyone provided a little something to bring to the table. This had once been a custom performed often and for virtually any reason. The bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood were once indestructible. However, time eroded that away. So, when such a chance arose, the people of Tern turned out a communal radiance partially forgotten and felt great thanks. Along with great food came great tales and great laughter. For those with the talent came great music. There came joy. There came song. There came merriment and dance. Not one could regret their residence, and they put forth their very best. A hoot and a holler came from outside the fence. At first, the merriment of the village drowned it out. It merely blended and became one with the rest. All paused and went quiet when a yelp echoed from the woods. Once again, there came the lumberjacks. Only this time, they had a prize of a different sort. Across the cart, half stacked with wood, was a large dead buck. That was welcome, a true blessing. Livestock was the primary source of meat in Tern since the religious conversion. The hunting had become so hazardous and poor, few dared to try, despite a tempting bounty. However, the buck and wood were not the only things the lumberjacks brought back with them. Between them was a coyote. This time, it was alive. This coyote was male and dusty. Thick ropes were tied about his body, his neck, and his muzzle like a heavy harness. They walked him like an unruly dog. Sonia couldn't help but grab for her chest as they came closer. Everyone cheered but her. The lumberjacks had captured a woodland devil. However, as Sonia stared at him, she saw far less and less devil in him. More and more, she saw a frightened animal. The coyote was a juvenile. He hunched over, licking at his lips and drooping his ears in posture. His eyes were wide and pathetic. His bushy tail was pressed close to his body, covering his genitals between his legs. His mouth was turned down in a frown. The poor thing was terrified. "What a wonderful blessing!" Lord Grundle declared. He marched towards the coyote. It cowered and sank backwards. "You brought back a woodland devil! God is telling us something! This beast is at our mercy, like Satan should be!" He grabbed the whimpering coyote's muzzle and gave him a shake. "How does it feel, hell beast? You nasty cur! God has made your purpose clear. You shall serve as an example to your miserable kind." Lord Grundle stood tall and held his arms out wide. "People of Tern, tomorrow we will hold a ceremony. This woodland devil was given to us by God to show us that he will be with you on your travels. This beast shall be sacrificed in the name of our great God. Let the beast bleed his way back to hell." The people of Turn let out a roaring cheer. Many threw up their arms in excitement and enthusiasm. All of them, except Sonia. To see that frightened creature seemed so unfair. It did nothing, yet it would die for no reason other than to boost the ego of Lord Grundle and his crazy notions. Her heart ached for the poor thing, even realizing how powerful it could be. Her memory had not forgotten that big beast that had tried to bite her. However, this wasn't that coyote. She fought so hard to hold back her tears. She couldn't cry for him. Not here. She could do nothing for him. Yet she felt the desire to help him in some way. "How did you manage to catch this woodland devil?" Lord Grundle asked. "Well, we were picking up a haul that we had started yesterday," one of the lumberjacks explained. "Out comes this beautiful buck. It was perfect, so we shot it. As soon as it hit the ground, this little cur flies out of the shadows. We didn't have any more bullets, so we rushed him. Instead of running off or attacking, he just lies there and turns onto his back." Sonia watched the coyote. That wasn't even really a noble capture. He looked hungry. He had probably been stalking that deer. When it dropped, he likely came to investigate if he could eat it. Even by the lumberjack's own admission, it seemed this little fellow had no interest in the humans nearby and would have posed no threat. The lumberjacks yanked the coyote across the square as the villagers cheered. He was thrown into a crate where he cowered as the entrance slammed shut. He scratched and whimpered, as if to plead for mercy and freedom. From these people, he would get none. No one took pity on his wishes. No one, that is, but a silent Sonia. He knew nothing about what was happening to him, or what was going to happen to him. It would be the last evening he would ever see.